the old man next door. My parents think that I'm insane for even talking about this, but someone needs to hear this. Back when I was 11, there's this old man whose name was Harold Granger. Granger was one of the nicest person in the neighborhood as far as I've known at the time. He would help out at the Willow Creek Food Bank and is overall just a very progressive person even though the town was not. He never had any enemies and never once have we seen him argue. Some people would chalk it up as a good loving grandpa. We would always visit him, me and the other town kids during our days off from school and other miscellaneous activities. He always gave us some sort of gift like just small little licorice sticks and pocket knives and such. One time he even took us out to the diner off Route 9. You could guess that was a reward for spending time with him. At the time we found it kind of sad. Did he have any family or actual friends? I wouldn't know, and frankly it was none of my business to know. I was always taught to just worry about myself and let other people be people. That memo wasn't instilled into everybody though. Perhaps you could say I'm different in some way compared to my friends. Either way, it didn't stop my friend from wanting to find out about Granger's life and situation. He asked the same questions and wasn't going to stop until he had gotten what he was looking for, so I took the opportunity as well to try find out the questions we asked. I sat my friend down, whose name is Ethan, to come up with a game plan. How was we exactly going to find out these answers and where do we start? I know looking back at it, it wasn't a very good or safe or even well-optimized plan, and quite frankly it was stupid. For kids I guess it was the best we could do. We seen a lot of movies and put more emphasis on than a lot because it was so very much. In those movies there was people breaking into buildings to find out the greatest secret to humankind, so in our kid brains we figured we would do the same. We came up with a time and date, which was Thursday, October 12, 2005 at 9:30 p.m. The only problem for me was to sneak out of my room and house. I never done it before, so I just to trust myself and my inability to be quiet. If you're asking how Ethan got out, then worry no further because his parents were never there because they worked night shifts at the hospital. Not important though, because you're not here to read me trying to sneak out. So then the day came and I met Ethan at his house at the time we came up with. Me and Ethan skedaddled our way to Granger's house and was now standing in his driveway. It wasn't that long and it was quite narrow. It should have only held one car, but it was gone. Perfect, we thought. He wasn't there, so we could just walk right in with no resistance. As you all could tell, it was stupid, but my defense is that we're still children, so how was we supposed to know? We tried the front and back door, but to no one's surprise it was locked. We tried open windows and everything that could lead inside, but also locked. We stood there in bewilderment until Ethan came up with a plan. We smash a window. What? Even to this day I don't know, because there had to be a better way inside. Ethan picked up a brick fragment and threw it as hard as he could manage at the side window. We crawled in and stood up, taking our surroundings in. It was spacious and a very grandpa aesthetic. We looked around looking at all his pictures and books. He really did like old classic books. He had the famous ones like The Catcher in the Rye and To Kill a Mockingbird, stuff you would really read in high school. We turned every drawer and couch cushions upside down to just find something about his family, but nothing came to be. We were in his house for a good 35 minutes before we heard a 1998 Ford pickup pull up. We knew we had to hide in fast. We got in his living room closet and closed the door fast. Our hearts were racing, and for the first time I knew what true fear, or what I could think what true fear was like. The front door opened and I could hear 2 sets of footsteps, one a little heave and slow and the other soft. We peeked out the door a little to see it was Granger with a little kid. The kid couldn't have been much older than 11 at the time and looked nothing like Granger, so to us we thought it was a little weird. We didn't know at the time what was happening, but we knew we couldn't leave right this second. Granger made his was past the closet and to a door near the kitchen. Me and Ethan quickly got out, but quietly. Ethan wanted to leave, but I didn't feel the same way, so I shot him a look saying I will be out there in a minute, which he didn't put up a fight and quickly went out to the window. I watched him get to the end of the driveway and made my way close to Granger and the kid, but not too close so I couldn't be spotted. I could see Granger giving the child something and leading him in the room. I creeped near that room and poked my head inside, taking the new surroundings in. There was a mattress and some cameras set up with tools and other doohickeys around the new room. I saw Granger lay the kid down on the mattress, and that's when I knew I had to get out of there like Ethan did. I slowly creeped my way through the kitchen and dining room to the window Ethan smashed, slowly crawling my way out of the house. When I hit the ground I landed wrong and sprained my ankle, which couldn't have been at more of a worse time. I got up and limped my way to the end of the driveway. Standing beside Ethan, he was the first to talk. He said that we can never tell anybody about what we did, which I would think is obvious, but I nodded anyway. I was about to say something, but then cries of pain came out of the house which startled us and made us run. You could probably tell who was yelling in pain and why they were, but that wasn't the main focus right now. We ran back to our houses and never told our parents about what happened. A year later I tried to tell my parents that Granger was a monster who hurt kids, but they thought it was just a joke or a prank on him. They never took me seriously. I tried the police, but they also never took me seriously. So 17 years later I'm telling y'all. I don't care if I write this wrong or if this is boring. I can't live with myself if I don't tell anyone. That was chilling, wasn't it? Now let's dive into our next terrifying tale. In case you're enjoying these stories, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Your support means a lot and helps us continue bringing you more spine-chilling content. My Nana used to tell me scary stories when I was little. There's one I'll never forget. Serious? I was 9 years old when Nana came to live with us. It was about 8 months after Gramps passed away, and I guess looking back she must have been lonely in that big house of theirs, rattling around with only the grief and memories for company. So despite a few protests from Mom, my parents took her in. There were no protests from me. None at all. Nana was loud and fun and I loved her. She had an almost limitless supply of peppermints, and she'd always slip me a couple whenever she saw me. She was always the first to stick up for me when I got in trouble too. But it was her stories I loved best. Nana had all kinds of stories. Stories about growing up during World War II, and stories about the things she'd get up to with her friends in Devon after her family had been evacuated. Sad stories, funny stories, adventure stories. But it was her scary stories that were my favorite. Nana had lots of scary stories. She told me she dabbled in the occult when she was a teenager, trying out Ouija boards with her friends. Tarot cards, fortune-telling. All that stuff. Most of the stories I'd laugh off or forget about not long after she was done telling them, but there were a couple that really did spook me a bit. I was only 9 at the time, you have to understand. And Nana certainly knew how to bring the stories to life. She'd shut off the lights in my room so only the glow of the night sky shone through the curtains, and she'd shuffle in real close. Close enough so I could see the wrinkles on her face and smell the peppermints on her breath. Close enough so her deep blue eyes could stare straight into mine. She must have given me nightmares with a few of those tales, but now, 15 years later, there's only one that I can still remember. Only one that stuck with me. The story about the shower and Mr. Shadow Hands. Nana told me about Mr. Shadow Hands one night after I asked about her baths. Nana used to love her baths. She'd spend ages in them, light candles and incense, and lie in the tub humming to herself until the water turned cold. It drove my mom crazy. But when I asked her why she loved them so much, she said it was the only place she could relax. It was the only place that was safe for her to relax. You know, people like me who are, well, more sensitive to certain things, we have to have baths, she told me seriously one night, shuffling closer on the bed. I couldn't possibly spend that long in the shower. It'd be far too risky. Nana stared at me with those blue eyes of hers, unsmiling, and I knew it was time for one of her stories. One of the scary ones. I shivered with pleasure and pulled the covers up to my chin. Why is it risky, Nana? She half turned to look out the window, watching me from the corner of her eye, pausing for effect. I waited, feeling my heart rate pick up ever so slightly in my chest. Well, she said after a moment. It's only risky if you close your eyes, of course. If you close your eyes for longer than 12 seconds. What do you mean? Why? Well, do you ever play that game in the playground with your friends? The one where someone turns their back, and the others sneak up on them when they're not looking? I nodded and Nana nodded back. Exactly. So that's what it's like in the shower when you have your eyes closed. That's what it's like with Mr. Shadow Hands. A cold itch tickled back. Who's Mr. Shadow Hands, Nana? She let out a deep breath as if she wished she hadn't said anything, turned her head back to face mine. When she next spoke, she'd lowered her voice. No one knows exactly, Nana whispered. Some think it's a creature that's attracted to the heat and smell we give off in there. Others think it's a demon that finds a way into our realm through the dense steam clouds. No one can say for sure, because the only ones who have actually seen Mr. Shadow Hands aren't ever going to be able to tell you. I pulled in a breath. Why not? Nana shuffled closer along the bed and leaned towards me, leaving my question hanging in the air. Don't you worry about it, sweetheart. Don't worry your pretty head. As long as you remember the rules, you'll be fine. What rules? Well, when you're in the shower, you try not to close your eyes for too long. 6 seconds is fine and 12 is just about okay too. But any longer than that? Yeah. Then what? Well, any longer than that and you may just start to feel something in the room with you. Something watching. And if you ever go longer than 18 seconds, that's when you might start to hear a noise too. Hear what? The soft tap 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 of fingers on glass. Fingers drumming against the glass door of the shower. If you do ever hear that noise, God forbid, will you make me a promise? What, Nana? Promise me you'll never open your eyes. I barely slept that night. Hardly at all. I'd close my eyes and try to relax. But every time I did, I'd imagine a face pressed against my bedroom window, staring in at me. And when I did finally get to sleep, I had nightmares. Bad ones. I had them all week, in fact. Dreams about disembodied eyes watching me in the dark, and long fingers reaching out to touch my exposed skin. It wasn't any better when I was awake either. Not really. The shower was the worst. That's when Nana's story really got to me. I'd never thought about it before, but suddenly I had trouble shutting my eyes in there. I'd be standing beneath the beating water, shampoo running down my face, and as soon as I squinted my eyelids closed, I'd hear Nana's words running through my head. 6 seconds is fine and 12 is just about okay too. But any longer than that. I'd rub my hair fast, feeling the shampoo dripping off my chin, and as soon as I'd counted past 6 seconds I'd feel it. A sort of pressure. Not a feeling of being watched exactly, but something close to that. I'd run my fingers faster and faster through my hair, frantically trying to get the suds out, and the ready blackness behind my closed eyes coupled with the rush of water in my ears would feel like a held breath. Like the silence before a scream. The seconds would race through my mind and I'd be so desperate to open my eyes again that I'd sometimes do it before my hair was rinsed fully clean, and my eyes would sting with shampoo. But before I shut them again, I'd always be sure to peer out through the steamed glass door of the shower cubicle. Just to make sure I was still alone. It wasn't long before Mom realized something was up. She heard me crying out in my sleep one night and came in to comfort me. Asked me what the matter was and it all came out. I told her about Nana's stories and about Mr. Shadow Hands. She got this look on her face when I was telling her, like she used to get with me when I'd made her really mad. This wide-eyed, angry look. Only this time she wasn't angry with me. She was angry with Nana. My parents' room was next to mine, and sometimes if I pressed my ear against the wall, I could hear them talking in there. Soft whispers. That night, though, after Mom was satisfied I wasn't scared anymore and she'd gone back to her room, the whispers weren't soft at all. Oh no. I heard Mom hissing to Pop about Nana. About the story she'd told me. Mom's voice floated through the wall, sharp and crisp. You know what your fucking mother said to him now, don't you, Martin? Pop's response was an unintelligible mutter. She's told him there's a monster that'll get him if he shuts his eyes in the shower. A monster. The poor kid's been having nightmares about it all week. Seriously, Martin, you'd better say something to her tomorrow morning first thing. Or I will. Nana came to visit me in my room the following night. That time, as she perched on the end of my bed, there were no stories. Nothing like that. Nana just sat there and stared down at me, her blue eyes wide and sad. The light from the moon outside my window lit up her wrinkled face. You know I'd never let anything bad happen to you, don't you? She said after a moment. I nodded my head. I know, Nana. You know I wouldn't let you come to any harm? I nodded again. Okay, good. That's good. She looked away from me for a moment, out the window. You know, the things I tell you in the evening are meant to help you, sweetheart. They're meant to toughen you up a bit. Protect you. She paused and shook her head. But maybe your mom's right. Maybe I went too far this time. She looked down at me and smiled. But even then, even though I was only 9 years old, I could tell it didn't quite reach her eyes. I'll tell you what, Nana said. You know what I told you about Mr. Shadow Hands and the shower? Well, I'm going to make sure you're safe. I'll scare the bastard off, how about that? It won't come back in a hurry if it has to face me. I stared up at Nana, watching her face glow in the moonlight. Watching her smile down at me. I nodded my head once. I was the one who found her. I don't know when exactly it happened, but I guess it was about 10 days after we had that talk in my room. 10 days after she told me she wouldn't let me come to any harm. I woke early that morning from a bad dream to a heavy thumping sound. I sat bolt upright in bed. My room was quiet around me, and I couldn't hear anything from the wall that joined my parents' room either. But the house wasn't entirely silent. Floating down the hall, muffled by my closed door, I could hear the sound of rushing water. The noise of the shower. I leapt out of bed and ran down the upstairs hallway, heart already pounding in my chest. As soon as I reached the closed bathroom door, I started banging on it. A deep terror was welling up inside me like cold water from a well, something I couldn't place, and I kept banging and shouting Nana, over and over again even though she didn't respond. Off to my right I was dimly aware of voices from my parents' room, the sleepy shuffle of footsteps. But before they had a chance to make it out onto the landing I'd lifted my hand to test out the door handle, more out of instinct than because I thought it might actually open. But the door wasn't locked. I kept banging with my free hand and it swung suddenly inwards, bringing me face to face with a wall of steam. Heat struck my skin. I squinted my eyes against the damp fog and peered into the bathroom. And before Pop pushed me to one side, Before everything around me descended into shouting and tears and chaos, I saw her. I saw Nana. She was lying naked on the floor in the shower cubicle, the water beating down around her. Blue eyes bulging from her face. One hand was curled against her chest like a dead bird, while the other trailed against the glass of the shower cubicle. The flailing finger marks she'd carved through the steam still clear and fresh. It was a heart attack that killed her. That's what my pop told me. He said Nana was old and the thing had struck her quickly and suddenly. She would have died fast and without pain, Pop said. She wouldn't have suffered. I knew better though. Even as a 9-year-old kid, I knew better. And 15 years later, writing this as an adult, I still know better. I also know my wife and kids resent me for refusing to have a shower in the house. For insisting everyone take baths. They pretend it's okay and they humor me, but I can tell they don't really understand it. Not at all. My wife thinks she does. She thinks I still carry the trauma of seeing my grandmother dying in front of me when I was little. I guess she's right in a way. But she doesn't know the full truth. Nobody does. And no one would believe me even if I told them. No one would believe me if I said the reason I don't take showers, the reason I haven't had one since I was 9 years old, isn't because I'm scarred from the sight of a dead body. It's because all those years ago, when I crept back into the still hot bathroom after the paramedics had taken Nana's body downstairs, I made sure to check the marks her fingers had carved through the steamed glass of the shower cubicle. The next story will have you questioning everything. Let's get into it. Before my father passed in 2022, he shared a story from his time in Laos during Operation Tailwind in 1971, a mission he'd kept secret for decades. He served as a Green Beret advisor working with 3 ARVN Rangers, local fighters recruited from Hmong villages, to plant acoustic sensors along a stretch of the Ho Chi Minh Trail near the Annamite Mountains. On the 3rd day, he and 2 rangers split from the main team to surveil a river junction where intel suggested NVA movements. The jungle was unnervingly quiet, no birds, just the hum of cicadas. After 6 hours of watching stagnant water and tangled vines, they debated pushing deeper or retreating. As my father signaled to move, he froze. There, 15 meters ahead, lay a Union cavalryman in faded blue wool, his skin weathered bronze, a Sharps rifle slung across his back, twin Colt Navy revolvers at his hips, and a Comanche tomahawk on his belt. The soldier locked eyes with him, raised a gloved finger to his lips, and gestured sharply toward the underbrush. My father hissed a command in Hmong, and the rangers melted into the foliage. Seconds later, a 60-strong NVA column trudged past, AK-47s and RPG-2s glinting in the filtered sunlight. They waited 20 agonizing minutes before slipping back to their team. Dad filed a report on the NVA but omitted the spectral soldier. He carried the secret until 2019 when he told me on his deathbed, and once before to his Cherokee grandmother in 1988. When she heard it, she chuckled weakly and whispered, "You met Iron Bear." Iron Bear, born Samuel Blackthorne, was my great-great-great-grandfather, a black Cherokee freedman who scouted for the 10th Cavalry, the Buffalo Soldiers, during the Indian Wars. He was famed for his Sharps, twin Colts, and a tomahawk gifted by a Comanche chief. He vanished in 1877 near the Washita River, his body never recovered. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring you more thrilling stories. And hit the bell icon to never miss an update.